one of the things that I observed, not only with my own children, but also in the school setting, is that there were perhaps opportunities that were available, but not everyone knew about them, or they were not earmarked for certain students. And I think my passion is that I believe that all students or all children are valued. I think with that relationship starting with Tech Core, I think it was basically helping the children to understand that they could do this, they belong in this setting, and that there's people in the community that are actually cheering them on.
Welcome to the Founders Focus podcast. For more than 25 years, Tech Core has worked to ensure K through 12th grade students in the United States have equal access to technology programs, skills, and resources that enhance early learning and prepare them for college or career. Founders Focus invites you along for the journey as we examine technology and how it impacts the way we work and live.
Welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of Tech Core's Founders Focus podcast. My name is Gary Beach. I am Vice Chair and founder of Tech Core. Our focus today is International Women's Day, a day to acknowledge and honor women around the world for the contributions they make each day to society. In the spirit of International Women's Day, I thought it would be fitting to introduce you to one of our Tech Core team members who will be our guest host. Brenda Miller is Tech Core's communication and marketing specialist. She will be speaking with a longtime Tech Core partner and educator, Deborah Maldonado. Brenda, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Gary. It is an honor to be a guest host on Founders Focus. We have a true champion as our guest today. Her name is Deborah Maldonado. She is currently serving as Family Ambassador for Livingston Elementary in Columbus City Schools. Gary, I am so excited to share her story with you and your listeners. All right, so Deborah, tell me a little bit about your own experience. How were you encouraged to pursue technology education as a career?
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having me on this time together to be able to share about my journey, my life journey. And it has been a interesting, fun adventure. And so my experience of encouragement is a long and a little bit of a winding story, which I call divine appointments. As a person of faith, loved by Jesus and who loves others, I'm certain I've had so many divine appointments. We won't have time to share them all because although I retired as a teacher, teaching was not my first career. And so I want to paint a picture for you of the background of this winding road. First of all, I've always been encouraged by family and by extended family and community to be adventurous and live life fully. And that starts like in Cincinnati, Ohio. I think at home, my parents, they modeled for me like adventure and being servants. We interacted with other cultures. My mother and my grandmother, who I knew, it wasn't just a picture like on the wall. They were craftsmen. They did quilting and sewing and cross stitch, and they also were tinkers. So I think that was one seed that was planted. If there was something broken in the house, they'd want to fix it. And then my mother and my aunt were also teachers. My mother, special ed teacher. My aunt, her older sister, was a teacher of children that were hearing impaired. And my father was executive with the post office, but he also worked a second job, and he would take us with him to that job. And it was where we saw him cleaning. He was actually cleaning like a restaurant. And so to see him in a suit one day and then see him cleaning another day, they were all hard workers. And they were always giving. And so, that was one of the things that I think helped shape and mold me at home. And then at school, like I said, I'm from Cincinnati and the city of Seven Hills. And I came up during a time during desegregation. And I remember being in the fourth grade and then going on to elementary, higher elementary, and then middle school and junior high and high school. And in that time, the desegregation, it required Lincoln Heights, it was one of the largest Black cities in the nation, was brought into that school district of Princeton. And so I think that opened up a lot of opportunities, maybe that we didn't have before. I actually lived in Woodlawn, which is adjacent to Lincoln Heights. And so I just experienced so many things. I remember being involved in, first of all, at Princeton, I had an African-American principal. And the way it was structured is that he was our principal in ninth grade and he followed the grades. He was our principal in 10th grade, 11th, all the way through 12th. So you felt like you had this person that knew you, invested in you. And in addition to that, there were a lot of clubs. I remember having physics classes and loving physics class. I remember also that, there were other class and sports. We had lacrosse then, and that's been more than many, many years ago. But the one thing that I always tell people to give them a point of reference is that I'm always thinking the sky's the limit as far as the things we want to do and expose children to, because for gym class, I had the option of signing up for gym class to take scuba diving. So while I was in high school, I actually took scuba diving classes. I learned how to use the breathing machine apparatus, how to save people. And so having that as an option, scuba diving class is one of my electives. Back in, that was basically, something I think about. It's like, oh, the sky's the limit as far as the experience. And then the other thing I recall is that I was in junior achievement. Now, junior achievement then is different than junior achievement now, but it's still the same principles, that where they are coming alongside students and giving them these interactive experiences. Back then, we actually were given kits, and we actually built kind of like a manufacturing model. We built things to sell. And so that was kind of the curriculum. So those are the things I remember at school. And then I think the road continued when I went off to college. I decided to come to Columbus and to go to Capital. And while I was here, I actually came here. I have a family here. I was at my aunt's house, and there was a family friend there. And I think there's these catalytic moments in your life that if I hadn't had that conversation with that person, it would have given a different trajectory of where I ended up. And at the time when I first came to Capital, I was thinking of, I'm going to major in English, and I was going to go to law school. I had this whole mapped out plan. Well, after I had this conversation with the owner or a worker, I think, of Black Arts Plus, he asked me the question. He said, had you ever thought about considering double majoring? And I was like, he said, while you're there and you're paying the money to, maybe pick up another major. And so I went back to school, met with counselors and my advisors, and figured out, okay, well, if I'm going to go to law school, they do, tax law. Let me pick up accounting. And I loved math in high school. And so I picked up accounting, and the short story is that I ended up majoring in accounting and English, ended up with an accounting internship. And of course, they're paying you to go to work. And so, law school got put on the back burner. And so I went and I worked for an public accounting firm, pursuing the CPA, worked for about 7 years in between the accounting firm and OSU. And I was working in auditing. And then I got this call, another catalytic moment where I was enjoying, and I was really blessed and fortunate in all the experiences I had. I had a great mentor there at Ohio State. And it was basically, I was being called to go teach. I've been in supervisory positions, and I enjoyed instructing and helping people. I did volunteer work at my church, and I just had this call and so this is another divine appointment, is that talked with my husband, and I said, I think I need to go and pursue this, full time. So I went on a Monday and handed in my resignation. And then on Friday, I had already put the paperwork and applied, but I hadn't heard anything. On that same week, on that Friday, I got accepted to OSU's MED program to become a teacher. What I didn't know was working in the background. And I have to tell people, I said, you just don't know. I said, just be adventurous. In the background, what I didn't know was the Big Ten at that point in time had decided to reshape their teacher education program. So in the previous years, it had been a 4-year program, and they decided we're going to craft this 5-year program where we pursue individuals that have a 4-year degree in a particular discipline, whether it's biology or, math, et cetera, and then have the teacher education courses, but with an enriching pedagogical type of training where we actually had mentors that walked alongside of us. So that was such a blessing. And so I ended up finishing the program and then becoming a teacher. And I worked for a private school for about a couple of years, and then for the public school in 4th grade, and loved it. And I believe in interactive learning, where you make that connection with real world. And I remember 4th grade, we dissected cow's lung. We collaborated with the nurse. And yes, we dissected cow's lungs and did all kinds of things, took the kids campings. We did all kinds of things. But it came to a point where I applied for a computer science teaching position at the middle school. And so at that time, unbeknownst to me, another catalytic moment, a divine appointment, this district had applied for what they call the EETT grants. Are you familiar with that? Okay, so it's enhancing education with technology, teaching with technology. And so as a result of being in that space, the computer science teachers, they took all of us and they trained us as train the trainers for Blackboard. So when we finished in that year's time, we had been equipped not only as computer science teachers, but also equipped to train other people in the use of Blackboard, which at that time the district, was using to deliver instruction. And so that is how I got around to being an advocate and encourager in technology education.
That's wonderful, Deborah. Wonderful. So while you're in this role and you're doing the computer science teaching, what kind of issues did you notice that helped you or spurred you or was your aha moment so that you knew that you wanted kids to have more experiences and different experiences, because you had to go out and find TechCore. So what was it that you were seeing that struck a chord with you?
I think that in teaching the children, it was always trying to figure out how to integrate their regular core subjects with the technology. And the technology is really a tool, and we know that even more today. And so it's how to tap into what their interests were and also cover the content, but then to see how it would help them. I think on a personal note, I had a hearing impaired child, and so I had a journey personally of how did I use the technology to support my child. And so when that question basically bubbled up to say, well, if it's helping my child, how could it help other students? At Champion, where I worked, the middle school, we had MD units. And so we used software that was supporting those students, like Don Johnson and co-writer, and being able to meet them where they were. That was my goal in helping the children is how can the technology meet them to help strengthen their skills? And then for students that maybe were not as engaged with school, it was like trying to start with where their interests were. One of the things that I observed, not only with my own children, but also in the school setting, is that there were perhaps opportunities that were available, but not everyone knew about them, or they were not earmarked for certain students. And I think my passion is that I believe that all students or all children are valued. And you want to make sure that they have an opportunity for those particular activities that would just open up their mind to think that, hey, this is a possibility and I could see myself doing this. And so one of the things that we started to do was to just have clubs. And in having the clubs, I had the opportunity to go to the E-Tech conference for Ohio. And I think that's where I had that first encounter with TechCore and had the introductions. And it was a friendship molded there because by being the computer science teacher and inviting them in and coming into our space, they connected us with community leaders that had expertise beyond what I could ever do. And so we partnered and collaborated to help the students, to empower them to know that, hey, I can do this, but actually letting them do this. So for example, partnered with OSU, and I never forget my first volunteer, Mr. John Preber. He was nervous being around the kids, but the two of us together, since I was comfortable being around the kids, but nervous to be around the technology, and he was nervous of being around the kids, but very comfortable with the technology. We were helping each other. And we had a project where we actually brought some old computers. He'd bring them in, and the kids would just, first see that the computers were working, but then they had to take them apart, and then they had to rebuild them and to go through a process of making sure to test them that they were functioning. And so that was just one of many projects. I think with that relationship starting with TechCore, I think it was basically helping the children to understand that they could do this, they belong in this setting, and that there's people in the community that are actually cheering them on. So TechCore opened the door and were welcoming, invited us, students from our club, we call it our Techie Club. They were actually invited to come to a fundraiser and present. They were actually sponsored to go to the next eTech conference and to see the Cisco van. I mean, they were just so excited. And then they became helpers in the building. That club was actually servicing teachers. And so if some teachers were having difficulties with maybe computers were not working, we had trained them on how they could maybe do a little quick diagnostics, check the power cord and or if they had needed help and assistance getting their class up and running, with logging on computers and getting to we had trained that club. And so they could be dispatched, not interfering with their studies, but they could be dispatched to help support the teachers, or if the teachers had a special project involving, technology, they were there for that support. So those are ways that we kind of try to engage and get them interested in computers.
I love that. That is so wonderful. So when we talked on the phone earlier, a few days ago, you talked about the difference between being a teacher and being an instructor. And for you, it was the holistic approach. So understanding that each child is unique and holds untapped potential, how did you help the children think outside the box to help them explore their own potential?
Okay. I think, first of all, I'd like to, when you say use the word learning, that like the word love in the Greek, it has 5 different meanings. I say, oh, I love you. That's a romantic love. And it's, oh, I love, my friend. That's more, friendship love. Well, the same can be said for the word learn. And one of the word learn in the Greek has multiple meanings, but one of them that I really liked, and it just aligned itself with the way I believe as a teacher should serve students, I think it's the word Zoe, and it's about being yoked. It kind of looks like and aligns itself with our apprenticeship and model. And so when you think about it, that as far as helping a student, you want to come alongside of them. You want to observe what their interests are and what you see them getting excited about, but you want to come alongside them and then let them experience. And so part of helping the students for them to see their potential, you create that environment where they are free to learn and they're not feeling like they can't be open and explore. And so one of the things as a teacher, I think, myself personally, I had to understand that I'm basically a facilitator. I'm not the expert, but I'm also helping to facilitate a collaboration where I'm actually working with the students on whatever it is that we're wanting to learn together. And so, as what I love about teaching is that I'm an artisan. So I have to be creative on how I create that environment. So I always start out the school year with having children to look at their hands and let them know, do you realize your hands, you got fingerprints here? that you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and how that you are so unique. There is nobody in this whole world like you. I mean, that usually was my script. And it was because I wanted them, if they've never heard that, maybe they have heard it, because we have wonderful parents they're working to raise their children. But I wanted to reinforce what parents are already doing at home and say, you are so unique. I said, but your unique is not just for you to look in the mirror at, but it's really to prepare yourself to go out and pour out this gift and to help your community. So setting that tone and that environment in the classroom, I would intentionally let them know that I'm going to need their help. They were going to be learning with me, and I'll be learning. I said, do you know I'm a terrible speller? I said, sometimes when I write on the board, it's hard for me to see. I said, so I'm going to need your help. Always check me on my spelling. Please do that. And they agreed to that. And so you create that culture where if you need help in the classroom, you got a lifeline, whether it's me or another student. And I said, all of us have our strengths. Someone might be really great in math, or someone might be really great in reading, that if you need help, you got that lifeline. And so you create that culture and that climate. And so that would be the first thing. I think the other thing was structuring lessons so that they were integrated. I love to do projects, but the projects are not just to do projects to say, hey, look what I did, but it was more about connecting with the real world. And then having them to present and share about it. So you're creating opportunities for them to practice those soft skills of speaking. And I think the other thing, like I said, collaboration and creating that environment, the integration of the projects, but then also reaching out to the community for partnering. We partnered, for example, with OSU, and they actually would come to the school, pick our students up, and take the students out of that environment of school. And maybe if you have students that never traveled, like in my life experience in my childhood, I traveled. I got to interact with other cultures. And so it's like creating those experiences outside of the school setting and home that are so different that it opens up their eyes to say, hey, I didn't realize this was out here. And so we would go to visit OSU, and I was so grateful for that partnership. But we visited not just the campus, we did the tour, but it was the entomology lab, it was the botany lab, it was a planetarium. And then afterwards, we would come and meet with OSU students who actually led science experiments and then it was but it was in a fun setting. And so reaching out to the partners to do those type of things that I wasn't equipped to do, but they were equipped to do, and also put another face in front of them. They love to meet new people. I think creates that ecosystem. The phrase we use a lot, it takes a village to raise a child. And so you intentionally create that village so that they can have those opportunities, similar to what I know I had as a child, that I could also provide for my own child because I have the resources to do so. My children would go to camps. I said, but that's not available necessarily for every family, for whatever those barriers are. And so one of my continued hopes and things that I love to do is to bring the clubs and the camps to the school. And so, of course, that's where Techie Corps came in. So every school I've been able to teach at, and that they had a will and a way, we've had Tech Corps come in for a Techie camp. That's what I wanted to say. So,
yeah. So tell me a little bit about your experience having Techie clubs provided by Tech Corps
okay.
with your classrooms. What kind of awakening did that bring to your students?
Okay. Well, I think for some of my students, it's just the idea that they could see other adults that cared about them. I believe, we want to let children know that there are adults that care about you. And so it's different than like a mentoring situation. It was where someone's come alongside of them to help them to learn something that is a new concept, a new skill, etc. So just that idea and spending time in a fun setting. I think the other awakening was that they could see from beginning to end that they had made something, that they had created something, and that it was also functional. So when we would build the the robots, and they would have the sensors in them. And then because of the sound or because of the light, they would have a response to it. Or, be able to design something using a Tinkercad online, and then actually have it print out, in a 3D printer. Just seeing that investment in them, it just reaffirms that they are of value, and that they have so many creative ideas that if they can do it in this little small camp and club, when they go back into the classroom, that they're going to say, hey, I remember that I did this. So maybe if I want to try something new in some other arena, whether it's, reading or math, or maybe it's science, or even to go beyond that, to even explore, well, what about this? Start asking questions. I think that's where that I would see the awakening for them, that they're willing to take that risk and be adventurous like their teacher.
Yes, you are the wonderful adventurous. Yeah. So I was thinking about when we talked earlier that you do work in you've done so much work in underserved communities, and you were able to bring so much enrichment to these communities. And I know part of Techie Club is getting tech professionals to volunteer in the classrooms, to come each week. And I know that, the tech field has always sort of had a gap. These
Diversity.
Yeah, diversity. It lacks diversity. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I don't know, when you had Techie Clubs, Deborah, I don't know if they were able to bring in diverse professionals. I know I've seen recently a lot more diverse women and people of color coming in, so that the students could see more folks that look like themselves.
Yes.
How does that affect a child to see a professional look like them, and to watch them in action?
I think the key point is that if you look in the mirror, this is what I look like. I have my brown skin and my brown eyes, my hair is curly or straight, and to see that same reflection standing in front of you, it just opens up it changes your mindset to say, hey, I could do this too. I think if you look back over history, there were, and I have some history with TechCorps, so I have also seen that change and that growing diversity. I'm excited to see that. Is that if you look back in history, that there were communities that had businesses and opportunities, and oftentimes their children could go to work with their parents to be able to work alongside of them and to learn things, whether it was an automotive shop, or if you were going to build computers, if you were going to run a construction site or something, you knew those things. And I have conversations, just have done some career advising, and I'll ask people that question. It's like, how did you learn it? My father taught me, or it's a part of the family business. Well, there's other communities where that is not the experience. And so what I love about TechCorp is if your family didn't have that experience, they're creating like I said, this village where those experiences, and not just, oh, let's open up a book and let's do this activity. No, they're creating the people there also. Because I think the relationship and the cheering and the mentoring and the encouragement that comes from our volunteers is so important than the things that are given. And so you're creating that village. So for some of those communities that didn't have those opportunities, because I had those opportunities, I see that, like I told you about my scuba diving class for gym, I had those opportunities, but have not been there for other communities. And so that is a fact in history, but my focus is always looking forward to say, no, let's make the change. And I've been blessed to be a trailblazer. I told you about that public accounting experience. I was only Black female on the professional staff. And so at that time, and so part of what I sensed then of trying to navigate this newness of not having that as a part of my background with my family and my parents is reaching out to some of my African-American brothers at that time for that support, that for those soft skills that maybe I didn't get trained in, and how to handle different challenging situations. I had that support. I had to seek it out. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think that's probably why I'm as adventurous now that I am. It's like, well, if I can get through that, I can get through, you know. But I also believe in your journey. There are things that you do job wise and happen. If you do a timeline of your life, there's highs and lows, and there's things that happen that you're getting trained and prepared for the next thing. And I do believe, as a person who was kind of shy in high school, that having worked for the public accounting firm, it forced me to have to go, because I go out by myself to meet new clients by myself, and who were usually did not reflect my skin color, and to engage them and to get the work done. And so it forced me to have to develop those skills, like on the fire. They tell you sink or swim, how to engage, white male men in a manufacturing setting. But I think that was part of also what brought me around to the point of going into teaching, because when I was in settings, and it would be, predominantly white and I'd say European, and I would observe the people working, and this is not for all people, but I observed that they weren't happy in their work. And that was kind of what I wanted to make sure, that whatever I did, if I was going to leave my children and go out to work every day, I wanted to do something that I had a passion for, that just like really I was on fire. And I always think about with teaching, having made that move, no regrets. I was so excited. I said, oh, you mean I get to do this and I get paid for it too? This is like, wow. So that was definitely, when I think about it, the seed that was planted back then. I think some of the things I was intentional about once I became a teacher, and having that in the back of my mind, was that wanted to, again, have those partnerships with communities. And so one of the things I did was look internally with the staff we had. And so I would do maker spaces, about the pivot with the library that happened, over the last 10 years or so. And so had the opportunity through E-Tech and some other training. I was working on my master's in instructional technology and got that. And so that maker spaces, I loved it. So we did the pivot, and there was a teacher, actually she's a librarian, and she also at the same time had gone to a training for NASA. And so we did maker spaces within our setting of the school, so that certain days of the week, we carved out time that they were doing stations, and it might be, and so we used the engineering model of research, design, and then build your prototype. And so they had different particular stations that they could choose to go to. And so some were building, designing a playground. And so we'd always ask them these questions. If you could go out and design your playground out there, redesign it, how would you? And so that would be the launching question. And so they could choose, one was doing map skills, another, we bought some kits that were, off from the store, but they would work those kits and go through that same design process. And so, but then the hook or the sweet part of that is, she had been to the training for NASA where they were going to be streaming online. And so one group would get a rotation where they would go to the library, but we would say, oh, it's time for you to go visit NASA. And so they would actually leave the room and go down to the library. And she had all these wonderful maker spaces, activities, and streaming from NASA. And so just creating that, again, it's bringing that environment, that exploring environment to the school for children in underserved populations that can't pay. The parents might not know about it, don't have the means for the transportation piece, which is usually an issue. And then also for the costs, economic costs. A lot of these camps that offer that have these type of experiences, they're $200, $300. Even for some of my own children, you apply for scholarships. And if you think you have multiple children. And so that's, I think, where I would want to see like the shift. I think the other thing, as far as recruiting and bringing other people of color in, I was blessed to have an uncle. and he's in heaven now, but I loved him dearly. He was actually a scientist and worked for Battelle, and he had several patents. And after his retirement, or even during it, mainly after his retirement, I would invite him in to be a judge for our science fairs. Oh, so yes, working on a book for him. So, and then, then the other thing I said with that OSU partner, just how making that connection, just reaching out to people I knew from church and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. Are you game? Are you ready to go on the adventure with me? And they said yes. And that's when we were able to take the kids to the different entomology lab, the botany lab. One of the aha moments were when kids would pick up the plant of vanilla, and to see that this is where the vanilla comes from, that's in my ice cream, and to be able to take those kind of moments are priceless. But again, it's planting seeds to open up their mind to say, hey, if you can do this, then I can do this. And especially if you have people coming alongside with them yoked, to walk alongside them, to carry them and to cheer them on, and then celebrate. I love to celebrate with rewards that, hey, look what we did and look what you did. So I think, especially for children, they don't have the capacity necessarily to think a week, a month from now. It's more about today. And then as they mature, keeping in mind developmentally where they are, to you enable to stretch that timeline out for them. So
that's wonderful. Thank you. That's really wonderful. So Deborah, obviously you've had a long spanning career serving children, being incredibly creative and resourceful. Thinking about the world we live in today, the pandemic that we've just lived through, if you had an opportunity to speak a blessing into one child's life that's struggling right now, what would you tell that child?
Well, if I can say one more thing before I say the blessing. After camping out this past couple of years, I retired and was of a mindset that I had to come back and try to help in some kind of way. And so I'm presently serving as a family ambassador for Columbus City Schools. And the whole purpose for that is to, if I can use my hands, which I like to do, build a bridge and help families connect with the resources available. And not just resources to sustain and support their home, but more importantly, I wanted to build beyond that to say, hey, let's look forward on some of the possibilities and let's kind of reimage what school looks like. And so with that background, one of the things that I'm working on currently is, just like I experienced such a blessing and support from community partners, we are working at the school where I'm assigned. We've got community partners for every grade level now. And they align with some things that were foundational for the school, which was building on that career path and learn. And of course, we got junior achievement involved too. So, but my blessing, I would speak over children and that child. One, I'd call them by name because their name is precious, number one. But I would hope and I pray that they know that they are loved and they're unique, and that their uniqueness would grow, blossom, and be fruitful, and that they would grow wisely so that they can learn to help their community. I think the question we ask sometimes is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like asking the question, no, how do you want to help the community? And that they live with purpose and with a servant's heart. I read an article when I was looking at some career information, and I never forget the article was about a person that is currently working as a software engineer. And his job is he builds kites, and the kites have solar collectors on the kites. So instead of having solar panels that are fixed, the kite is mobile and it can go in different places and it collects more because it can go higher. And in the article, what really jumped out at me, he said that the reason he's able to do this ideal job that's so much fun, that he really loves, like me as a teacher, was that when he was younger, his father owned an auto mechanic shop, and he would let him go to work with him, tinker, take things apart, give them like old radios. And he said to this day, that is why he thinks he enjoys, he had that opportunity to explore and play. And that's why he thinks he is where he is today, because he had that experience. And that just jumped out at me when I saw that article. And so that's really kind of in a nutshell what I'm excited about with TechCore is TechCore not only provides what I believe the activities and the support from the technical standpoint, but I think what they've done is they've created, and we've had this relationship for so long, they've created this intentional pathway at every tier. Elementary, early, late elementary, 4th, 5th, and 6th, and then your middle school, and then your high school. They've created this intentional pathway with mentors and really opportunity for children not only to learn the technology piece so that they're skilled and confident in that skill to be able to go out and share with their community, but they're also embedded in that the mentorship that helps them to learn the soft skills that they need, as well as building their confidence as leaders. And I've been able to have the pleasure, I'm so grateful to witness that firsthand. So, yeah.
Deborah Maldonado, lifetime champion of students. Thank you for being with us today on Founders Focus as our special guest for International Women's Day. And thank you for activating generations of adventurers just like yourself.
And I'm grateful for the time. Thank you for having me.